Welcome to the Fantasy Formula 1 Podcast. I am Paul. That is Ben. Thank you for joining our conversation. It is a conversation we would be having anyway.
Yeah.
You can hit us up on all the social medias at Fantasy Formula 1 Podcast or email us directly, info@fantasyformula1podcast.com. Today we are talking about the post-Australian race, which was round 3, and holy crap.
Yeah, it's Australia, the land where everything's trying to kill you, the land where your toilet water turns the opposite direction, and the land where Red Bull isn't on the podium. Everything's upside down, Zees?
It makes zero sense. What do you do when you go to Australia? Well, if you're Max Verstappen, you get a brake fire, but we'll go talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't a choice.
It wasn't
a
choice.
He wasn't like, today I'm going to have a brake fire. It's been too long. I don't know what his. I don't know. I can't do a Dutch accent.
I can't do a Dutch accent.
Okay, it's probably for the best.
But it was a very eventful race, and we'll go into all of it. 3 important takeaways before we do our standard. This episode will talk about the race. Next episode will talk about the fantasy implications of it. But 3 important takeaways. We must wait, and I'll break the fourth wall. We must wait to use all of your swaps and make your changes until after free practice.
But why is that, Paul?
Because it will screw you when they go and they change stuff.
Absolutely.
Because last race, there was huge issues. This race, Alex Albon, and we'll go into it, crashes out in free practice 1, takes his teammate's car for free practice 3.
Yeah, I've got feelings about that.
Huge feelings.
And on that note, though, the tickets just opened up for the Las Vegas Grand Prix later in the season, and holy crap, they're expensive, like really stupid expensive. But and they've got these packages where you can do like all 3 days for $600, which is a lot of money, or you can go on practice day for $150. And I kind of, in my mind, I was going, why would you do that? You would do that because every time a driver gets in a car, it's a major liability, and race impact starts at free practice.
Yes, and I don't think, though, I'll have $300 just to go walk around in Vegas. I wonder how they prevent people from watching the race in Vegas when it caught, because it's on the strip. Like, what do you do?
I think what you do is you get a hotel room on the 15th floor, get your binos.
There we go.
That's a fancy word for binoculars. I don't know what the youth are saying. Maybe I said something offensive, but
that's awesome.
But just get a whiskey. Yeah. Have your binoculars. Have the broadcast on your TV in the background, and just be comfortable.
No, I love it. That's So Alex Albon. Actually, we'll take it in step. FP3.
Yeah.
So much stuff happened in the free practices that I actually ended up needing to use my wild card chip on one of my teams to not take the negative points.
So I'll talk more about this next episode. But my concern, I had Logan Sargent on 2 of my teams, and at that point, I just didn't bother switching because I kept him. I would have faced multiple penalties for making a switch, because I had already adjusted my teams, and so I wasn't confident that with the money that I could get from selling Logan, could I get a driver that would in fact score points, or would I be better off just taking the 0? And I mean, and that ended up being he didn't. So this actually brought up a question as well. So Albon crashes in free practice. Sargent doesn't race at all because he's a consummate teammate and says, "Here's my car." I mean, he didn't offer it up; he was told.
He was voluntold. Yeah.
But he does it.
Yeah.
Do either of them get a DNF?
No.
Does Williams as a constructor get any kind of DNF?
No.
Okay, cool.
Williams does not. So there's not classified. So basically, you get a DNF or a not classified.
Okay.
If you try and you don't get it, then you get, because remember in real life F1, it's all just a matter of semantics, right? As far as Williams is concerned, they didn't race, that equals bad, done. We in the fantasy world care about DNF versus not classified.
And that only applies on race day.
On race day, or on qualification.
Gotcha.
Day.
And so from a constructor standpoint, they just said we have one car.
We have one car who gets it, and Logan Sargent was listed as inactive, the same as Oliver Behrman would have been listed as inactive.
Got it.
They are not driving today. The same as Carlos Sainz last week when he had his appendicitis.
Yeah.
Right? Last race, I should say, when he had his appendicitis.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. It wasn't a penalty. It was your $5 million that you gave to get that driver is going to give you a net zero, is going to give you 0 points because they're not racing.
Yeah.
You don't get that money back unless you trade him.
Sure.
And then we'll go into that next episode, but no, I kept him on my list because I didn't want to spend a trade this week to replace Sargent and then spend another trade for next week to get him back on my team.
I got you. Okay.
But we'll go through all that in a second.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and then you just brought up signs.
Yep.
Going from an appendectomy.
Oh gosh.
2 weeks later to winning a Grand Prix.
Right.
Oh my God.
Right.
Like what a swing of emotion.
Yeah.
You know.
Talk about a guy who's fighting for his life. He's like, nah, I'll go ahead and do it.
And I mean,
and he comes back and wins.
And here's the thing, you know, he's been driving for years, right? This is only his third win in his career. But like, what an event to come back from is like, you know you're out of the job at the end of the season.
Yeah.
That sucks. Then you get appendicitis after your practice.
Everybody's going to be looking for this dude.
And then your replacement comes in and does a good job, makes you feel. It has to make you feel like I am utterly replaceable. I mean, and ultimately, every one of them there are so many people dying to be in their shoes. But so to come back and win it is so cool.
It is. I'm super happy for that guy.
Yeah.
The next big takeaway is that Max Verstappen is mortal.
Yeah.
And his 40-plus race streak of not having a mechanical failure or whatever is over, but we cannot freak out about it because if you look at the standings on the F1 Fantasy website, everybody who got Haas on their team, along with, who has a constructor like Haas and Ferrari, they won.
Yeah.
You know, or the people who did Limitless last week and got Red Bull and got Max Verstappen, you just lost a whole bunch of points.
Absolutely.
You know, because instead of Max Verstappen getting you 50 points, you got you negative 20.
Yep.
So it's the big takeaway from this is to not freak out race to race.
Well, and that's just it. This is not Max Verstappen failing or having any kind of like mental breakdown or a lapse in judgment. This is his car broke down.
If anything, he raced 3 laps with a locked right rear brake and kept up with the pace.
Yeah.
Like he started getting passed right around the time he's like, hey man, my rear end ain't right. This ain't right. And then he was smoking for like a lap and a half.
Right.
And everyone's like, wait a minute, is something going on? Is something going on? And he was still keeping up with the Ferraris around him. Like, you know.
And then the bummer here is if he had won this past weekend, he would have matched the record for consecutive wins, which is currently at 10. And I was like, oh man, that sucks for him. But no, it doesn't. You know why? Because you know who set that record? Him. He would have tied his record. So he's doing just fine.
He's doing okay.
Yeah, he's not hurting for career.
He's still
accolades.
winning. Max Verstappen is still winning the Drivers' Championship even after that loss.
Yeah.
Okay, because he's dominant. They're all like the top few places are all within like 10 points of each other.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, it's not just that he missed the podium.
Yeah.
It's he did not finish, and he's negative 20 points.
Yep.
I mean, sorry. So I'm intermingling fantasy versus driver points.
We're allowed
I'm sorry.
to do that.
I appreciate the grace. Yeah, but like to completely not finish the race and to still be the top driver this early on is insane.
It is absolutely insane.
So
he's no longer the top driver in the F1 rankings, which is the first time in years he hasn't been there.
Yeah.
Just because of fantasy points and how it breaks out. But we'll get to that again in a minute. DNFs. Like last race, you saw Lewis Hamilton and you saw Max Verstappen.
Yeah. Both
get a DNF. Like and the race before, like we had 2. So, or 2 or 3 or whatever. So the big what I'm feeling going into this season is DNFs and points are going to be fluctuating very hard.
Sure.
Because more so than last year. Because last year you had your Red Bull, you had your Max Verstappen, and you had Sergio Perez, and maybe you would change him out to get, you know, your McLaren driver or your Ferrari driver having a good week, or your Alonso as soon as he was having a good week. And the issue last year was, okay, who do we move around in these very few slots? Your good drivers are always getting you points, the bad drivers are always costing you some. But this year, with the range of issues we've had with everybody, a big takeaway I have from this week is that, you know, the trends are much more important now, and we'll go in and talk about those like with the fantasy points and stuff. But like Mercedes, No, stay away from
double DNF.
Now, this is something that I didn't realize until just before we went live here, where I was double checking my spreadsheets and stuff. You get a not classified or a do not finish officially in Fantasy F1 if you don't complete like 80 or 90% of the race.
Okay.
So George Russell placed last. He did not finish.
Oh, how so? Okay, so George Russell
crashes the last lap of the race.
Oh, I didn't know it was the last lap of the race.
Yeah, that's why.
And that sucks for Alonso too, because he would have. He
would have placed whatever. But
okay, so I'm going to back up because I'm thinking things and we haven't done the background explanation.
And that's fine. Yeah.
So Alonso and Russell are going at it last lap,
fighting for sixth place.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was Stroll who actually ended up getting sixth.
Mm-hmm. Double check that, but yeah.
Yeah. So Stroll for Aston Martin ends up getting sixth place, but at the last lap of the race, Alonso and Russell on Mercedes are fighting for that. Alonso, you told me he brake checks Russell.
So
Russell goes off the track and crashes, just done. And then Alonso finishes the race, but then was it a 20?
There was a 20-second penalty.
That's massive
that they incurred after the race, and
then the terminology was for potentially dangerous driving.
Yes,
man.
And you'll see it. So when you watch like the start of the race of any race, all the drivers. Let me back. So in F1, there's braking points.
Okay.
Right. And so all the drivers know, okay, to make this turn on this track or in this area is when you brake. You can brake early, you can brake late. If you brake early, it slows you down, but you can make a tighter turn. If you brake late, then you're carrying a lot more speed into the turn and you'll probably go wide. But if you want to have more energy in the turn and you want to go around everybody, that's what you do. So you can adjust your braking earlier or later depending on what you want your entry and therefore exit angle of the turn to be, and what you want your speed to be, and that is all variant based on what you're trying to accomplish in the turn.
Sure.
There's also a standard, like more, and do that in air quotes, but then there's also if you're racing by yourself, the optimum entry speed, braking point, exit speed, acceleration point, all of this for every turn on every track.
Yeah.
And then you deviate from that based on what you want. So this is something from the guy who loves it, but I've never driven a single lap on a racetrack. So
we gotta arrange something like that, or we need to do like a live episode where we I don't know, like let's just see how much of a broadcast we could get through while doing like some high speed go karts or something like that. I'd be
down. So we did high speed when I was over in Bahrain. Bahrain has a right next to the Bahrain racetrack. There's a huge go kart track with gasoline powered.
Oh, are you serious?
Go karts, and we when I was over there, we as an office would go and we'd race go karts.
Nice,
and that was awesome.
Yeah,
oh yeah, but it really gets your blood for it. But so there's a right way, and then at one point we were sitting there, we drew the racetrack up on our whiteboard in our office, and one of our cell leader would shout out to Snacks. He would go ahead and talk. He briefed us on the proper race line for the track.
Oh, I gotcha.
And entry and exit points and stuff like that. So I need to let him know that we're talking about this here. But so anyway, so that's the background of how it all works. What he was doing is he knew that Russell was going to pass him. Russell had fresher tires.
Sure.
And for the laps leading up to the end, they were both gunning for sixth place. Because, and this is something to actually talk about in this episode, is I'm just going to make a little note. The points matter so much more this season than last season.
Yeah.
Because the front's so bunched up and there's such a big gap between the back.
Right.
That as soon as a 1 or 2 point difference right now is measured in multiple spots in the championship for the constructors at least and for the drivers. But anyway, so they were chasing each other around. George Russell is gaining on him. Fernando Alonso and basically brake checks George Russell 100 meters before he would normally brake.
Right.
The telemetry and from Fernando Alonso's car shows him braking, downshifting, then accelerating, upshifting, then getting into the turn and doing his standard stuff.
Sure.
So because these cars are so advanced, they're broadcasting all their information. You see the basic blip on the radar or the spike in his heartbeat when he brake checks Russell and then when he goes into the turn.
Sure.
So they both get called to the steward's office afterward, right? And I'm being a little anecdotal here. Stewards are the ref. They get called to the principal's office. They get called to the referee's office. And this happens regularly where if you do something stupid or silly or questionable, and they say, okay, this is what we saw, defend yourself because you're in trouble because you're here. And Fernando Alonso was like, no, I knew he was going to pass me. I knew he had fresher tires. I knew this was it. Fernando Alonso says that he was trying to change his speed and his entry angle into the turn to mix things up, to try and enter a certain place, to try and get out of a certain place, to try and defend against George Russell. And George Russell said, that's absolutely true. I was following him too slow. I wasn't prepared for it. He was racing his race. No problem. It's on me. I saw he did something I saw him brake, saw him do his thing. I flinched. I crashed. Crashes on me, George Russell.
So there are things I like and there are things I don't like about this.
Yeah.
So what I like is you've got the racers for all 10 constructors.
Yeah.
You got to remember these guys are spending half the year globetrotting. I mean, their entire profession is they travel together and race each other across the world.
Yeah.
Like, side note, what a cool job.
Oh, that'd be so awesome.
God.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I would sweep their floors. Hey, Haas, hey, whoever. I will gladly follow you around and sweep the floors.
You got two reserve drivers right here just standing by.
I'll be a reserve push broomer. Like your boy
right. Also, side note, pit crew, the average pit crew member makes $270,000 a year. Like that's on the low end.
Dang.
Right.
That's awesome. I didn't know
I'll
that.
learn to change a tire fast for that kind of money. I'll start practicing today. So I love the class that both of them display by going in and saying, we're both racing. So
Rubin's racing.
You need to blame me. You need to blame him. Whatever.
It was what it was.
Super classy. Love that.
Super classy.
But what I don't like is you want the spirit of competition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the call to the principal's office. One person is fighting to get across that line faster than the other.
Yeah.
If you know your car is going a little slower, I mean, if we apply the standard to so Mercedes doesn't have the fastest car this year.
Nope.
Sorry, Mercedes. It's easy. It's an easy target right now.
Sorry, bud.
If you got McLaren coming up behind you,
yeah.
If you're Russell or if you're Hamilton, what can you do except tactically maneuver if you want to be competitive? And so if you're going to get called to the carpet for being competitive, I mean, you're in a car that has had every feature stripped away except for two things: go fast and keep the driver alive.
Yeah.
So aggressive driving is an inherent part of the race. So I don't fault Alonso for making a tactical decision that would keep him in sixth place.
And how about that? I completely agree with you. The drivers agree with you. And I even think, and again, I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I think the FIA agrees with you. The issue is safety. And they're trying to make it so that if you and I are racing each other, we have to win or lose based on speed and our ability and our blocking and stuff like that.
Right, but define ability.
Exactly.
That's
and the issue is with that is that as soon as you brake check somebody like that, then first off, if and again I have to watch the replay, but if Russell hadn't veered away, if Russell hadn't reacted, he would have rear-ended Fernando, and that would have been bad.
Right.
So basically, the argument is that Fernando created an unsafe situation that would either take them both out of the race or the other guy can crash.
But see, that's the thing. You're already in an inherently dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. And your point is well made. It really is.
If we're so worried about that, put everyone in a bunch of used Hyundai cars, that actually have seat belts and can only go so fast.
Right.
This is such a dangerous sport anyway. I guess the counter argument would be so why would you add to that as a driver? But I don't know.
And so the way they come down is that they penalize as a generic thing, to where as soon as a driver does something unsafe like that,
sure,
like brake checking somebody, they penalize them for it. And especially if them brake checking results in a crash, they in the end the FIA just don't want that in their brand. I think that has to be what it is.
I get that, but I just you know, if you take something to its unreasonable extreme,
sure.
If you want to avoid that entirely, then give don't have any turns, just have a straightaway, and everyone has their own lane, and whoever's the fastest.
And then we have nitro meth funny cars, right?
No, that's exactly it. There's certainly an appetite for that, but it's not going to be as big as what F1 is.
And I think everybody agrees with you. I think they're trying to watch out for their brand. They're trying to make sure everyone stays safe, which is why they brought him into the principal's office. They both stood together. Even the guy who ended up on the wall is like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah.
And they all stood together in drivers, but the other like, no, we need to make sure that this isn't right. Now, rewind 10 years when the telemetry wasn't as good. Fernando gets away with it. And to drive this point home about Fernando, earlier in the race, I need to figure out who it was. I think it was when he was getting passed by Perez.
Okay.
Basically, Fernando knew whoever was behind him was within... I think maybe it was Russell who did. I think it was Fernando. He knew whoever's behind him was within DRS. They went through the DRS zone, and Fernando literally got off the racing line and let the guy pass him.
Yeah,
because he knew he was going to get passed.
So
he wasn't trying to block, wasn't trying to stay in that position. He was like, "No, I'm on my race. This guy's on his race. He's faster than me. Take it." When they were fighting for that sixth place, Fernando's like, no, I'm going to brake for the turn, and I'm going to bleed off speed, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to be unpredictable.
Yeah.
And, which is why I think he and Russell both agree that he didn't do anything wrong.
I will concede, I think somehow there has to be an accounting for, avoiding or penalizing potential malicious intent.
Yeah.
Like if it's, well, if I can't win, I'm going to make sure that, I'm going to clip this guy. If I'm going to crash, I'm going to make sure someone else does too. Yeah. I mean, obviously nothing like that, but okay.
And all the drivers agree that wasn't it.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's go ahead and walk through my notes on it. Okay. In the free practices, here's the good stuff. In the free practices, FP1, Alex Albon crashes. On his own, solo, just rear end gets a little loose. He hits the wall. He breaks off. It's very much like, George, what happened to Russell, too. He snaps all the tires off on his left-hand side. Turns out he does, horrible damage he basically damages the chassis.
Yeah.
He cracks the gearbox.
Nothing that could be repaired in time for qualifying.
They didn't, and here's the issue, they didn't have another chassis with them.
Oh.
Right now.
No, so would a constructor typically?
No, usually you have spare parts.
Yeah.
Williams, and I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about it, but all the talking heads on F1.com have been talking about how basically Williams had a whole bunch of issues even getting a car. They were late to preseason testing. They barely had a car in time for preseason practice before Bahrain, and there only exists 2 chassis.
Really?
Only existed.
So next week, are we going to see one Williams car?
That's a good question. And there are no, I don't know yet, because they have to actually build one from the factory. At least it wasn't, because I know there's a lot of inspections and stuff that go on.
Sure.
Because the survivability, the crash, the pod that protects the driver is part of the chassis.
Yeah.
It's all one thing. They call it the monocoque. So that happened. And so then they had to make the decision of, well, we need somebody who's been doing best so far this season.
Yeah. Last
year, Alex Albon had 27 or 28 points.
Well, and there's a couple things that we hit on too. Yeah. We've been talking DNFs, and how many did Logan Sargent have last year? I think it was 12.
It was a whole lot.
I think it was 12.
So some huge amount.
It was DNF at least half of the season. Yeah. So I get it. And if you watched the latest Drive to Survive season, that the new principle for Williams is very, very analytics and statistical driven, like way more than, go for your gut.
Yeah.
And so I get that. Based on the track records, I get it. But Logan has been doing. It's 3 weeks into the season. I get it, but he's doing a little bit better.
He is.
And I feel for the guy, because it's like if I was in his shoes, it's like, I am not the guy who crashed my car. So why am I getting punished for the failure of the more successful guy?
Yeah.
So good on him for keeping a good professional face on it. Yeah. I mean,
and I'm certain behind closed doors there was some very heavy words said.
There have to be, right?
Have to be.
Yeah.
But my big takeaway from it is Alex Albon still got what, 12th?
He got 11th.
He got 11th.
Did not finish in the points.
Didn't finish in the points.
And in fantasy wise, I think he only netted 4 points because he passed a few.
He passed, so good for him. But the gamble didn't pay off for him. And
no,
so there is huge heartburn going on with Williams right now. First off, you don't know. Like, I was all in on them and Haas being the two, like the bedrock teams on which to form your team going forward.
And you're not. Hey, and early.
But we're saying don't freak out, don't do massive.
But here's the thing, and you're right about Haas. I mean,
Haas is nothing.
Both drivers finished in the points, which for them is a massive win.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome.
It is
good for them.
But so big, huge question marks with Williams right now.
Yeah,
because the fact that they're willing to do that means that's a telegraph that they can call it. It's not emotional. It's just pure numbers. No, it's fine. But if you're Logan Sargent, then you're the second driver to somebody who's coming in 11th.
So it's the situation no one would ever want to be put in. And he doesn't have the track record to be like, I'm going to take my skills to.
That's true. But if somebody else offers him someplace else, he's going to jump ship. He should.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, his contract but also Alex Albon, their contracts I think are up at the end of the year.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah. They're both looking they haven't signed anything new yet. So. Okay.
Interesting.
So anyway, that was all the drama. And as soon as you had Alex Albon on your team, and this drives the point number one about you have to wait until the end of free practice 3. It only gives you like 2 or 3 hours to make all your moves, which is an issue.
Yeah.
But Alex Albon crashes out free practice 1. Doesn't, and they get the word, hey, he's out. We're not going to fix his car. We don't know what we're going to do at the start of free practice 2. And some of the announcers were like, there's no way they're going to switch cars. No way they're going to switch cars. That would like ruin the team morale. That would be bad. So if you quick flinched and you're like, oh my gosh, Alex Albon doesn't have a car to race. He's not going to race.
And you drop him.
And you put somebody new in just in time for him to stay in and drop Logan Sargent. Like, so you would have,
you've potentially ruined 2 of your driver spots.
Exactly. And none of the drivers are making enough points to be worth a 10-point penalty right now.
Yeah.
None of the bottom tier drivers are anyway. So that was a huge issue with that. Continuing on with free practice, there were 5 spin-outs off the track total. Mercedes and Aston Martin, both of the drivers spun out off of the track in free practice. And Bottas and Sargent spun, but they didn't hit the wall. So we're talking like smoking tires, bald spots, spinning around just in practice.
Okay, so jumping back to Williams for a second, I did not know that about Sargent.
He had spun out.
That makes me feel a little bit better about going strictly with the guy with the better record.
But Russell and Lewis Hamilton had both. Like, it was a common thing to because there's one turn whatever where people tend to get all warbly, and that's where a lot of the issues happened.
Gotcha.
So it was a very ugly free practice session. There wasn't any sprint races. Fine. In qualification. So during qualification, Zhou Yu, he messed up his wing during quali somehow, and they had to replace his front wing, so he started in the pits, which stunk for him, which is like the second race in a row he started from the pits.
Yeah.
But he usually gets you 5 or 6 points, 8 points, passing people because he's not a number 20 driver. He's a P15, P13 driver.
Right.
So big takeaway from Zhou Yu is doesn't matter how he qualifies, he'll get you 4 or 5 points.
Exactly.
So that's fine. So that's good from him. And Sergio Perez impeded one of the Haas drivers. And then he got a 3-place grid penalty. And he was I forget, I have to go check my notes if he was qualified second or third. There's race results, fastest lap, starting grid. So yeah, Sergio Perez qualified third. He started 6th. And he never got higher than fifth. Yeah, and everybody else bumped up there. Then so Lando Norris started 3rd, Charles Leclerc started 4th, Oscar Piastri started 5th, Sergio Perez started 6th, and Perez couldn't pass anybody.
Gotcha.
He couldn't pass anybody ahead of him. So again, a big takeaway with Red Bull is whichever way Max Verstappen goes, that's the way Red Bull goes.
Yep.
Sergio Perez, I mean, and this was a really high degradation. Like everybody was on medium and hard compounds. everyone's tires were going out. Like it was a thing. But as soon as you level the playing field, Sergio Perez does not appear to be faster on a level playing field than the Mercedes and the McLaren. He's not slower. They weren't leaving him in the dust and whatever.
So check me if this is a fair football crossover comparison. Okay. So you got Max Verstappen. He's got kind of the Patrick Mahomes vibe where he's he can do inhuman things.
Yeah.
Sergio Perez, great driver. Would never take that away from him. He's consistently either on the podium or really darn close. He would be more of a game manager quarterback, where it's like if he qualifies well, he will maintain. He will keep things where they are, and he's hard to pass. But he's not going to have this dynamic, amazing. Oh my gosh, did you just see that kind of performance? Generally,
yes.
Everyone's got their great and their terrible days, but he's not going to be the wild card on a race day.
I completely agree. And because I know last year there were a couple times when he was past half the field, right?
Sure.
And as soon as you start Sergio Perez in, P17, I think he gets to the middle of the top 10.
Yeah, and again he's also driving, he's driving Red Bull and and again he's not within this very exclusive field, he's a great driver.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think as soon as you start Sergio Perez second, he finishes second.
Yeah.
If you start him third, he finishes third, especially if he's nestled in amongst the McLarens and the Ferraris.
Right, but he's not going to get you those passing points because honestly, if he's starting P17, something is wrong.
Something's wrong. And will he get you those passing points and pass you up into P7? P6? Yeah, he will.
Potentially, sure.
And maybe if there's a track that suits the Red Bull car better, he would have done better. But Ferrari and McLaren were just all in great form.
Yep.
And as soon as everybody's in great form, Max Verstappen will beat people. But even then, it's as soon as you had started Max Verstappen P5, would he have been able to get past both of the McLarens and get past the Ferraris to get to the front point? I don't know. And again, this is why we shouldn't freak out, but it's an indicator that, a lot of the from a fantasy perspective, a lot of the points that come with Red Bull come with Max.
Yep.
And at least this is in this example, it was just everybody else was even, so they just weren't.
And this really highlights the strength of Ferrari. Is again, for anyone not named Max, they have a really good. They have two great drivers.
Yeah.
They've got a solid platform. And it just all worked out for them. This is their first time getting P1 and P2 since Bahrain last year.
Exactly.
And I thought, well, that makes sense. Red Bull's been dominating, but that must have happened a little bit more. But actually, there's an article on F1 that also highlights, though, this is just the fourth time they've placed P1 and P2 in the last 14 years. So this is a massive deal that they collected maximum points.
Yeah. And we need to be careful not to freak out and say, oh my gosh, I need to get rid of Red Bull. I need to get rid of Max Verstappen because he crashed and da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
No, as soon as Max, something goes wrong next week, the other brake fails or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Then it's on paper, it's going to look like, oh my gosh, man, Ferrari's just unstoppable. No, you had the two people who had won the world champions for the last decade.
Yeah.
Both of them were out due to mechanical issues.
Well, so that's
like,
where
that's the. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, this so that one stat alone kind of got me thinking, Max Verstappen's been dominant for the last couple of years, and this is going into his third year of being insane. He's been good since he was 18 years. He's the youngest Grand Prix winner in F1 history. And so he's been around for several years, but Red Bull's been a threat for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But before Max Verstappen became the Max Verstappen he is now, it was all Mercedes because before that it was Hamilton. Was he world champion 7 years in a row?
He was,
or has it been interspersed?
He was world champion 6 years in a row, and he got his first world championship within. I don't know if it was with McLaren a while back. Or maybe it was with Mercedes.
Okay.
No, I think
I thought he'd been Mercedes his entire career.
As soon as I said it, I was like, I think I'm wrong. But anyway, so his first world championship was with we'll say Mercedes again, but then there was another. I think McLaren won after that. Once,
gotcha.
And then however it went off after that.
So to that point though, over the last decade it's been Mercedes and Red Bull.
Yeah.
And Ferrari's been right there.
Yeah.
Like right there. And I never thought I'd live in a world where I would audibly say, I feel sorry for Ferrari.
Poor Ferrari.
Like it's always a bridesmaid thing, man.
Yeah.
Like, but it's true. Like they are always right there.
Yeah, they really are.
And they've had two solid drivers, and they will still have two solid, right? Because when Hamilton joins them too, it's going to be crazy. And
it's going to be, yeah.
And it's going to totally reinvigorate him. These last couple of years at Mercedes must have just been totally demoralizing.
Watching him slide.
Again, I'm sure $30 million a year helps that. But to have not won anything or to truly not be competitive, has to have sucked.
Just
so
gut-wrenching.
It's going to be interesting seeing how Ferrari moves on, and again, never would have in my brain ever considered them an underdog. But you
don't think.
But over the last 10 years, that's what they've been. They've been so close, just not quite there.
Yeah.
So it's wild.
It is, and I'm on team Ferrari now. Like you have to be. The points are there. They're doing great. And the fact that Carlos Sainz is this big of a baller, like you say, come back from surgery and winning.
Well, and that's his win. So I don't know what his first or what his second win was, because again, I'm still the new guy here. So, but his first win was, I've done 143 races. I want to win this thing, and he beats his teammate in a really stupid ballsy last second duel, where it's like, oh, we could potentially double DNF here, but just because I want to win, and I'm supposed to be supporting Charles here, and he ignores the what's the principal
team orders.
Yeah,
team orders. Yeah, he ignores team orders and just does it.
That's kind of wild. It makes for great TV.
Yeah.
I don't know what his second win was, but then for his third one to come back from an appendectomy, like what an entertaining dynamic driver. So so I'm hoping for good things for Ferrari, but I'm definitely going to be following Carlos.
Oh yeah,
wherever he goes,
and this seals the fact that he will have a seat next year.
Oh, he has to.
Don't.
Yeah,
like come on. Some guy who's drinks lead and spits musket balls like this, like absolutely. You know? So before we get, because I do have some, you hit on something about team orders. Remind me about team orders real quick.
Can do.
So my notes on the race. So Verstappen was out with a brake fire.
Yep.
Hamilton, he had a power unit failure. So this is a big issue with McLaren power units. Mercedes power units that McLaren and Mercedes both have, among others.
Oh, really? I didn't know McLaren was also dealing with this.
Part of that. So, you wouldn't know it looking at this race. They did fine. But both Russell and Lewis Hamilton had dialed back their power units because they didn't want to blow their engines. Then Lewis Hamilton had a power unit failure like early in the race.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's doesn't know what a power unit is, since these are hybrid engines, it's engine.
Engine, yeah.
Yeah. So and they can get controlled remotely, and you can fine tune it, and you have different modes and all this. But yeah, so McLaren's pooped the bed. So Hamilton's Mercedes pooped the bed, and everybody's been having power unit issues with if they have a Mercedes power unit. So that reared its head.
Sorry, I love how generic the term power unit is. Yeah. Like it could, if you could go all down the sci-fi path.
Right.
It's like, Mercedes lost the Allspark. The cosmic cube has imploded.
The cosmic cube
imploded. It's any kind of MacGuffin sci-fi term you could use that.
1.21 gigawatts. The important thing, right? Yeah.
So the oscillation overthruster broke. So do you know that one?
No, I don't. know
that's Buckaroo Banzai, man.
Oh, is it?
That's what allows you to go through solid matter.
Oh,
yeah.
What was it called?
The movie or the thing?
The thing.
Oh, the oscillation overthruster.
The oscillation overthruster.
Such a bizarre, odd movie, but like really cool, high-minded sci-fi concepts.
That's awesome.
You've got solid matter, which is, protons and neutrons and electrons floating around. So most of that is actually empty space, right?
Yeah.
And so the oscillation overthruster allows you to compress those components and travel in the space between the space in between the solid objects and come out the other side. So like he drives this F-250 with a jet engine on the back of it through a mountain as part of this science project. And as he comes out the other end, it turns out there are aliens from another planet that have been banished to this negative space within solid objects. It's like it's an alien prison that no one knew existed.
That's awesome.
Cool idea.
Yeah.
Weirdo movie. Awesome young Jeff Goldblum is in that one. And then it's Peter Weller. I'm sorry. We're supposed to be talking about F1, but anyway.
But we'll talk about Jeff Goldblum anytime.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, okay, so sorry, I was about to say something else about that, but about Jeff Goldblum, but
sure.
We're going to get back on topic. Sorry. Both Kick Sauber cars had horrible pit stops.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time. This is a major issue. This is a avoid Kick Sauber level issue.
Exactly. This is a Kick Sauber will finish the race and get you between 3 and 10 points most of the time. But do not they're not a negative team, but they're one of the teams that they're not worth. They won't get you good points.
Well, and that's
because they have huge issues.
And that's the beauty of F1, man. Like so there is so much chance that goes into this.
Yeah,
but it's chance that only arrives when you're pushing every limit of engineering and capability. Something can still just go wrong. You can have brilliant people working and putting their blood, sweat, and tears into a process. And on the day of the race, your driver gets appendicitis. It rains when it's not scheduled to do so. And that negates all of the calculations, all of the build quality, or one day a wire comes loose and your jet engine level steering wheel just doesn't connect quite properly.
And there you go.
And so with Kick Sauber, one of the few things you can control is individual performance and discipline.
Yeah.
And if that's not there, if that's what's falling apart or causing you to lose just a few seconds, that's a problem.
And it's
so you got Max Verstappen in the brakes. It's the first time in 2 years that's happened to him. Cool. Mulligan.
Yeah.
But, when you're having pit issues on both cars across multiple races in a season that's only 3 races deep, that's not great.
No, and I know we've mentioned it before, but to that point, so my wife Ames, right, she played softball, her whole life, and she's a coach now, and she said that their version, at least in athletics, is you're either the prospect or the suspect.
Oh,
if you think about it, the batter's at bat and they strike out.
Yeah.
If you're the prospect, it's like, oh, that's no problem. It was dark on Tuesday. They didn't have their ice bath a week ago. It was whatever. They're just fine. Don't worry about that strikeout. You'll get them next time, champ. Keep going. If they're the suspect and they strike out, I told you this guy was no good. This person they can't hit. It doesn't matter that they hit one out of the park last time.
Yeah.
That was a fluke because the pitcher, he had a sore shoulder, or she had a sore shoulder, and the outfielder bobbled it, and that's why she got the home run.
That is a perfect analogy for this. Max
Verstappen is still the prospect.
Kick Sauber is the suspect.
And a lot of people, and it's all a matter of opinion, right? Because we're always the prospect in our own mind.
Yeah.
Unless you have, unless you're one of the people who view yourself as a suspect, in which case definitely need to work on that.
Oh yeah, no, you go to therapy, work on your self-doubt, because you're going to be your best advocate.
We all have it.
Oh, for sure.
Trust
me.
So
I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
Suspect. So we right now keep Red Bull as your prospect. They had a bad race. Look at the numbers; they're fine. And with Sergio Perez, no, he's still a prospect. I'm keeping him on my team.
Oh, for sure.
He didn't qualify as well. He wasn't able to pass the best teams out there. Fine. With Kick Sauber, they're a suspect, dude.
Yeah.
Maybe not as bad as Alpine. Like, I'm not avoiding them like I'm avoiding Alpine right now. But you don't put money on the fact that Kick Sauber is going to do anything for you, because they won't. They won't DNF. They'll keep you in the positive barely. But I would stay away from Valtteri Bottas, because he is definitely a suspect. So, and I can go back and look at his numbers and stuff, but yeah. So I love the prospect versus suspect.
No, yeah, that's spot on. Now with Alpine, again, if you watched Drive to Survive last season, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhaney are poking their heads around at partial team ownership. So
that's true.
They could pull a Wrexham on him, throw some money at him, and but it's a whole different animal than a than a 5th tier soccer team.
So Zogan Yu, speaking of kick stoppers, Zogan Yu right now has 13 points.
Yeah.
And my calculated points per million for him average right now. Wait, I don't think I've changed.
Because I think he's not the cheapest.
Let's go with 3. Hang on. I didn't change my my stats here. I wonder why all those numbers looked really big. Okay, here we go. So Zogan Yu is a 0.63 points per million right now. He has 13 points. Not bad, but that's including one where he went -1 because he crashed in practice and didn't qualify.
Yeah, this week he got if he's on your team, he got you 4 points.
Got you 4 points, which that's good. Valtteri Bottas, his teammate, has 1 point. Period for the season so far.
Ooh,
yeah. So Valtteri Bottas doesn't like. If you look at Kick Sauber and you're like, Zogan Yu is still keeping you fine with points.
Mm-hmm. Well, so he's so. You said Bottas. So he's gotten you net 1 point.
Net 1 point.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because this week was his best because he got you 2 points.
How many? Yeah, exactly. But he was at -1 going into this weekend.
Yes.
And So, but then as soon as you have Kevin Magnussen, who's right around that price range, he has 22 points.
Yep.
And as soon as you have Nico Hülkenberg, he has 17 points. So, and if you're looking at Zogan Yu, if you're looking at Kick Sauber, Haas is looking a lot better than Kick Sauber right now.
Oh, for sure.
And they're all in the same price range.
Yep.
So,
and that's the thing too. We as I've gotten started with you on this podcast. We've been talking, top tier teams, mid tier teams, low tier teams, and I've been, using that terminology, but I haven't really defined for myself what that actually looks like. And in my head, top tier where you've got the like racing is my life guys, that's Red Bull, Ferrari, and I would say historically Mercedes this season, man, like. Coming up from mid tier, I'd start to put McLaren in that top 3. I think for this year so far.
I think the top 3 is now the top 4 with McLaren.
Okay,
right
fair.
Now, if that makes sense.
So would you say there is only one mid tier team, and that would be Aston Martin?
Right now, I would agree with that. Right now, Aston Martin is
the mid-level
mid-level team.
Interesting.
You have Haas that's getting up there. You have RB that's trying really hard.
Mm-hmm.
You have Alpine that's just trying to put 2 tires, just trying to get their tires to roll forward.
Given that they were Renault a couple of years ago, I would say they used to be comfortably in that mid tier.
Yeah,
but that mid tier doesn't exist right now except for Aston Martin.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so the bottom tier is as a collective getting better. Like they're all progressing.
Yeah.
However, especially from a fantasy standpoint, you have your top 4, which Mercedes is the least reliable of those top 4, but they're still Mercedes. As soon as they, unscrew themselves and they come in P1, P2 next race, no one's going to be surprised.
And mid-season they could totally pull a McLaren and their upgrades could work miraculously.
We all know that Alpine will not suddenly place P1, P2.
Yes.
That won't happen. That's
Correct.
why they're in the bottom. So if we're trying kind of like the litmus test to what makes a team where your RBs, your Kick Saubers, your Haas's, your Alpines, they're not going to win this weekend. We know they will not. Unless a whole lot of people crash, they won't.
Mercedes double DNF'd.
Exactly.
Max DNF'd.
Yep.
You never know. It was,
But which is why the top teams, as soon as you're like, oh my gosh, McLaren won it. Yeah, they did. That we get it.
Right.
As soon as you say Aston Martin won it, you're like, oh, wow, really? They're the middle team.
Right.
As soon as you're like, hey, RB or Alpine won it, you're like, no, they didn't. Come on.
That's where psychologically this gets so weird.
Yeah.
Because Carlos Sainz, Disney sports movie week finish for him where he comes back from almost internally exploding and wins. Did he win because Max was out? And who knows how much that'll play with your head as a driver, because it's again, I hate to go back to the Ricky Bobby well where where Cal Naughton at the very end finally wins because the other two got out of their cars. He's like, I know I only won because of a technicality, but if you take this out of my hands, I'm gonna punch you in the mouth.
Exactly.
I don't want to take away from Carlos's win because it's awesome. Yeah. But man, is it just because this guy sat out?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And to that point, like I won't take anything away from Carlos or Ferrari, but you see a lot of the memes and stuff like, oh, Carlos, no, dethroned, he beat Max. No, Max Verstappen beat Max Verstappen. Like, granted, points, like, rules are made up, but they're there for a reason, and you have to be able to drive the race in order to win the race, and Max Verstappen didn't.
But you know what? Those knee-jerk reactions are why we exist.
Exactly.
It's why commentary happens during free practice.
Absolutely.
Because it's so fun.
All right, so I think that pretty much wraps up our race debrief. Those were the big things, the big talking points, and now we will go ahead and head into the episode number 2 and discuss all things fantasy related. And going forward, we will try and do better to avoid the fantasy topics during the pre-race brief, but the fantasy topics are really the reason we started this.
Yeah, so
I
stick
have
with
a hard
us.
time doing it. All right, see ya. Cheers.
Take care.